I'm Adie Von Gontard, and this is how you sell without selling out. Rogers that.
I'm Rogers Healy, and welcome to Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. And today we have someone who's been selling his entire life, and I have a feeling that you're going to learn a lot today about someone who has disrupted the world of pro sports. And here's a teaser: he was not a professional athlete. He is someone that understands entrepreneurship because it's in his blood. It's in his blood. Professional sports are in his blood. In fact, his family used to own the St. Louis Cardinals. Double fun fact, my great uncle used to play for the St. Louis Cardinals. His name was Rogers Hornsby. That's another episode. But today we have the pioneer of Dallas, Texas. He is a real estate titan. He is an entrepreneurial legend. He is a lot younger than me, and his name is Adie Von Gontard. Adie and his brothers are the owners, the founders of Young Money APAA Sports. By the way, yes, I am wearing one of their hoodies. You can buy them on their website today and every day moving forward. But Adie has found a way to go and bring a different type of business into the world of relationships, knowing that people deserve to be treated with kindness, with fairness, and with respect, which is why his company is growing in every single sport and also in the sport of business. So today we have the pleasure of having my buddy, someone I respect greatly and someone I care about, Adie Von Gontard. How was the intro?
That was pretty good. I don't think I have anything to say now.
Are you emotional?
That was pretty good.
If you're not watching, there are tears in his eyes where he finally just got the tribute he deserved. But I shared a lot, and I know that this is all about you. So maybe give a little bit of background on you and what got you to being Adie and at such a young age of just finding significance.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for that intro. That was amazing. I grew up in Virginia on a big farm. Every summer we would work there on the farm. It's about 1,600 acres.
Oh my gosh.
But every single summer, that's what Dad put us to work. So from 8 to 5, we worked with an hour lunch break, no TV during the day. So you would go out there and work on the farm.
Really?
Always. And yeah, we did hay. Then once I got old enough, we would stack hay up in the barn. So carrying the 50-pound hay bales and put it on an elevator that went up, and you had to stack it to make obviously enough room for all the hay. And from Royal Virginia, it's just a huge like horse country.
No way.
Middleburg, everything. So
as a kid, did you find yourself resentful that you never were able to milk an animal?
No, I mean, I guess not. I mean,
do you feel there's still time? I mean, you're only time. 30, and so do you feel like that would be your first, like once you have your first like big moment as an entrepreneur, are you going to go buy something that you can milk?
I guess the best thing is instead of being able to milk, we had a lemur, a black and white rough lemur.
What?
So I grew up with that.
Did you try to milk it?
I did not try to milk. It was a male.
Okay, that's another episode.
But he had a monkey house. I walked him every morning before school. We have a long driveway. Our mom would walk down every day to pick us up in the bus, and he would walk down with them. And
seriously?
Yeah.
Do you remember the name?
Hooligan.
Hooligan the lemur?
Yes.
You might be the first guest on here that actually had a pet lemur.
He was the best.
Have you tried to have a lemur at your house in Dallas?
No, I'd like to, though.
Does Highland Park have a lemur rule?
I don't know. You would know that better than me.
It's time to find. There might not be an anti-lemur rule.
He was great. He was amazing.
So I actually didn't even know that. I just assumed, since you're so ingrained in the world of pro sports and entrepreneurship, that you grew up. I thought you grew up in St. Louis. I knew that you had a family farm that obviously has lemurs and monkeys and all sorts of cool stuff, except you can't milk anything on the farm yet.
Right.
But without TV and working like farmer hours, what was the exposure to pro sports? How did you fall in love with it?
I always loved sports. Like in the morning, I would wake up, I'd read the newspaper, only obviously the sports section. I would just read the box scores.
As a kid?
As a kid.
The box scores, golly.
I never watched movies. I always watched sports. So really, I always watched the St. Louis Cardinals, obviously. You know, so every night I would watch the Cardinals on the weekends. If they played during the day, I'd watch the Cardinals. But
fun fact, by the way, as a kid, the Cardinal, it was the most fun time in the history of baseball, probably. This was the Mark McGwire era. So you were probably 7, 8 years old when the home run race was going on.
It was 1998 or 1999,
yeah.
So I was 11.
Yeah, I was a senior in high school. I remember I grew up a huge Mark McGwire fan, but then over the course of time, I became a huge Sammy Sosa fan. And I would have in my car, which is the reason I didn't have my first kiss till college, I had a poster where I would update the home run score in the back of my truck.
Really?
Yeah. No, I didn't have any friends, but I really felt like that was my calling at the time. But then I learned soon after that doesn't get chicks. Anyway, so you found a way to just fall in love with sports.
Yeah, I just fell in love with sports, and then went to Episcopal High School in Alexandria, Virginia, boarding school, played baseball, played soccer. always was, trying different sports. I started sports websites, went to college, obviously at SMU, was majoring in real estate finance. And then my junior year, the sports management program came to SMU. So I double majored in that. And then I just, like how I started the sports agency, I didn't even mean to really start it. I had this sports website that it was like a fantasy sports before Draft Street, or DraftKings, before FanDuel, et cetera. And it was, you picked who was going to win a game, no spreads.
This was
I had built it like this was 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I didn't know how to write code. So I think that was probably the biggest thing stopping me or preventing me from really being able to build it. But I started this website. And we were doing a party at Brackett's in Mockingbird Station or wherever it is, right by the.
Was that your bar?
No, it was
like the ping pong bar.
Exactly. Yeah. So I rented it out for a couple hours on Mustang Track at SMU. I looked on there and I found if you want to book a Dallas Cowboys player, you pay $500 and he'll show up to. Brackets for so
no way.
I was like perfect. So booked him.
Do you remember who it was?
It was Phil Costa. He was an offensive lineman. And so it was all set. I had, banners everywhere, promo girls, it was going to be the next best thing. I was going to have 300 people there.
Were you in college?
I had just graduated college.
Wow.
So it was going to be perfect. An hour before the event, his agent called and was like, "Hey,
Phil Costas?
Yeah. Hey, Adie, hate to do this to you, but he's not going to show up." And again, I had no idea about professional sports at this time. I had, really didn't know what to expect. And I was like, well, what do you mean he's not going to show up? Like, I have everything booked here. I have everything planned. He's like, I think his family was coming in town or whatever. His agent was nice enough to say, but and Phil was nice enough to say, hey, let me figure out if we can find someone else.
You had an hour?
About an hour. And they were able to get Stephen McGee.
Oh, really? Quarterback.
Exactly. And Jesse Holly, the wide receiver.
Oh, even better.
So they both came to Brackets that day.
No way.
And it was the most fun event, everything. Stephen was great. We've been to our ranch in West Texas, and he's an avid hunter. And
his wife's a realtor now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great guy. So
where did he play? Texas A&M?
Texas A&M.
And was Jesse Holly the one that won the reality TV show? He's become a buddy too. He won 4th and Long.
Exactly, 4th and Long. That's right.
And this was at the peak of both of them.
Right.
I mean, McGee was Romo's backup.
Exactly.
An A&M guy, so everyone in Texas loved him. And Jesse Holly was a reality TV star that, anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, they're both terrific people. And so they both came. It was an unbelievable event, and they were just like, and I was asking them about it because I had no idea, on that. And they were just like, this is cool. Like, unless you're the Tony Romos at that point or whoever, like no one's out there here really finding deals. So I was like, great, can I work to find you deals? Because I love sports. And they're like, sure, go ahead. So
this is before the agency.
This is how I kind of broke into the agency. So I started calling 100 places in Dallas a day to, sports bars, restaurants, businesses. Hey, do you want Cowboys players to show up? And I get 97 no's, 2 maybes, and I just kept calling, and, would get 1 yes. So I just started setting up appearances all over Dallas.
How did you get the players? Just leveraging Stephen McGee and Jesse Holly?
Yeah, Stephen, Jesse, and then, it spread, or I would DM them or on Twitter, and this was like 12, 14 years ago when Twitter wasn't.
So Phil Costa is the quiet hero of this entire thing for bailing you.
Exactly.
Wow. And so again, you have in your family, I think I love the fact that your background was literally working manual labor and you just get programmed to go and grind. And I think that's really hard, especially with people that are in our generations, is there's a lot of entitlement. Especially if they come from a successful family, they don't know what it's like to build and create and get it out there. Was that hard for you, knowing that you were 22, 23 at the time, and you had a vision where most of your friends were either still in college or they had their first job? You're building, you didn't know this, but you're building an empire at the time. So calling 100 places, getting 97 no's, 3 yeses, and then you learn something that I think is the hardest thing in business is that scale, right? Where Adie cannot go and continue to call 500 bars a week and DM 500 players. You have to go and actually build something. So at what point your idea turned into something that was valuable, but then it turned into a business? When did you go and actually couple all
exactly that of scaling? So from Dallas, I broke in again. I went to boarding school, and all of my classmates obviously went to colleges all across the country. So I broke in to the Seattle market with Golden Tate. He was a rookie
Notre
there.
Dame.
Exactly, Notre Dame. Famous touchdown interception with the replacement refs. And I started doing his marketing.
Just through DM?
No, one of my best friends, his girlfriend at the time went to Notre Dame as well and was close with Golden. So somehow I was introduced that way, and she introduced me, and Golden said, yeah, go ahead and see what you can do on my marketing. So that was how I got into the Seattle market. And
were you living in Seattle?
No, I was living here in Dallas. But Seattle was, at that time, they were going to the playoffs every year.
Russell Wilson.
Exactly, Russell Wilson. And that market was just so, like, people would pay anything for these players.
Were you out there every week?
I mean, I would go out there a good amount, but at that point I was setting up probably 15, 20 appearances a year with 10, 15 players a year, maybe even 30 appearances a year.
On the Seahawks?
On the Seahawks.
Wow.
And that became so big I was really able to scale it. And then
before you had the sports agency?
This was all before this.
What was this operating under? This was just under?
I had BYA, which actually started as Book Your Athlete. And I BYA.
Dude, I remember this.
Yeah, that was it.
I remember it was you too, because I first heard about your family because of the real estate stuff.
Right.
And then I started following it. I don't know, it wasn't on social, it might have been on Twitter or something, but it might have even been, I remember when you had the party at Brackett's, and I couldn't go because I was the creepy older guy. But I remember this because there was some crossover. I don't know what it was, but yeah, anyway, but you brought it to significance pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the Seattle market helped a ton, and then from there, really, I was always looking at, and I think credit to my family again, I was always looking at how can I do something different than just finding appearances? How can I build generational wealth for my clients and for myself? So I always looked at how could I get equity in companies rather than taking a $20,000, $30,000 endorsement deal for clients. How could we get them 5% equity, 6% equity in a company? And if that company took off, they would be worth more probably than they can ever make in the NFL or NBA. And you had to weigh, obviously, the pros and cons of, do we need money up front? Can we balance it out, et cetera? So that was where I was able to really scale it by finding equity deals for companies. And that's where I grew it from Dallas to Seattle to really nationwide of representing 50 NFL and NBA players.
Wow. You know who pioneered that thought process for the most part is randomly William Shatner, who was on Star Trek, and 50 Cent. Vitamin water. So right. they kind of took that and brought it to the main stage, where I don't know the numbers. I think it was something where they made like 50, 60 million bucks when it sold or went public. Right. But so you started doing that. You remember your first deal that actually popped?
Soto, which is a apparel company based out of Seattle, and they started and they were carried in Nordstrom's, and they went to nationwide in Nordstrom's, and I was just always looking at different companies that I thought could go national and global. And yeah, vitamin water, you're exactly right. They really were able to pop that, I think, to $80 million for 1%.
But then again, you provide a different kind of value as well, and you have the entrepreneurial, business-minded, approach versus a lot of guys that are in the pro sports world that hire their buddy, maybe somebody that's done it before, maybe even an agent that has 1,000 other clients. You needed them as much as they needed you.
Exactly.
And so what led you to actually starting the sports agency? You go from BYA to being the guy in Seattle for Golden Tate that played baseball in high school and Virginia to now, you're making a name for yourself pretty quickly when you also have stuff going on here. I remember you had the bar. It's the first time I met you and your brothers was that where I remember the claim to fame, it was the world's largest bar.
Exactly. 65 feet long.
Yeah. And I remember I was like, damn. And it was hard to go in there and not be jealous. I was like, God, this is so cool. And I'm paying them to have a drink, and they're living the dream. But I'm saying, but you don't just get there because you're handed something. You get there because you understand how to build. And then
it was fun, but it was such long hours because you would that bar business.
What was it called?
The Eberhard.
The Eberhard, yes.
And
do you still own it?
We own the land now of it, and now it's 77 degrees.
Yeah, which means you don't have to manage the day-to-day.
Exactly. And can just sit back and
cash checks.
Rent. Exactly.
And not have to worry about the lawsuits and
that's right.
People losing their cell phones.
Exactly.
But walk us through the process that got you to being a sports agency owner.
So from building all the marketing and doing that, all of a sudden these sports agencies started reaching out to me and saying, hey, Adie, we'll hire you to take over all of our marketing. You just do this marketing. You obviously have excelled at it. You build out your own niche on this. We will hire you. You take over all of our clients for marketing, and we'll continue to do the contracts. At that point, I realized I'm really doing the grunt work. I'm the one banging down the doors. I'm the one looking and pioneering and doing equity deals. And I was doing large marketing deals. I said, why not start a full service sports agency? If I'm negotiating all this marketing, why not also negotiate players' contracts?
When was this?
This was, I guess, about 9 years ago now, 8 years ago.
Wow. And so you're in your early 20s.
Exactly. I'm about 24 now at this point, 25.
And you go from being essentially a offshoot of these other agencies to an unintended competitor that has access to all these people because in large part they didn't want to do the grunt work.
Exactly.
Which is where you make your, I found that in business, you make money a lot of different ways. I think the easiest way for what it's worth is creating a convenience. And you did that. And you found a way to do it so much to the point where they didn't want to go and internalize it because they trusted Adie. But next thing you know, 24, 25-year-old does what?
So I got certified on the NBA front, being an NBA agent. And I had started APAA Sports, which just stands for me and my three brothers, Andrew, Peter, Alex, Adie. So I had
way easier to say APAA than say APAA. Exactly. I've always said APAA.
I mean,
APAA. No.
Either one works.
It's almost like a really nice Italian wine. I'll have a glass of your finest APAA. And it's like, yeah.
So I started that, and around the same time, Young Money Sports, Lil Wayne, started a sports agency. And the reason he started it was, he, at that time he was living in Miami, and he would go to dinners. He would be with all of these athletes, and there's always a saying: all athletes want to be rappers, and all rappers want to be athletes, right? And he was hanging around, friends with all of these athletes, and they really were coming to him and saying, we're making all this money, but we don't really have that support staff around us. We don't really have the people that care about us, other than getting us the contract, right? And all the credit to Wayne and his team, Mac Main, everybody. We really got to give back, and they've created such a successful label, on hip hop and amazing.
Well, how did you get connected to Lil Wayne?
So
don't say Instagram.
And I didn't get it.
I was like, yeah, he's got 100 million followers. Exactly. It's like he's going to get back to you in 3 years.
Exactly. One of the guys that has been with me since day one, really a founding partner with us as well, is blood cousins with Mac Main, who is the COO of Young Money
Is that
Entertainment.
David?
No, Hellion Knight. I think you met him before, and he's been with us since day one. The greatest person in the world, and he introduced us to.
Which was natural. It wasn't. It's like all the other stuff, and I think that again, this serendipity is a great word. It's like a fortunate mistake or accident, but I think it goes in line with just, what's meant to be is meant to be, and you have these things that fall into place because you're at the right place at the right time, but you still strike on it. So you go and you have APAA Sports. How you doing? and you're connected to Lil Wayne, who's arguably a top 5 most recognizable celebrity potentially in the world, and he is your generation's Tupac, right? There's no one that comes close to Lil Wayne. I don't care what anyone says, but at what point were you like, okay, did you approach them to go and become their agency partner?
So it's so interesting on that, because when they started Young Money Sports, agencies reached out to them and said, we'll give you millions of dollars to use your name of Young Money and then put your name after it, right? And all the credit again to Wayne and his team. They said, we're not looking just for a quick buck or to license our name out there. Like, we're starting this sports agency for the right reasons, and that's to be different, to be a trendsetter of.
And Wayne was involved.
Wayne, yeah, and he still is extremely involved. Wayne and his entire team were involved, and the best part of it, of organically, we didn't just put it together in a week and say, let's try this. Like, we literally, I flew to Miami, I flew to New York, flew to LA. Like, we literally sat down and mapped this out of how we wanted it, what was my vision, what was their vision, and it just literally aligned.
How long had you had APAA up to that point?
For probably a year and a half.
So you go from being, which you still would have figured it out.
Right.
You were figuring it out. You had athletes, right? And I think that it's one of my favorite social media follows, especially on Facebook. And I feel like I'm always the first like, which is kind of creepy, but it's not your background. You knew baseball. Your family owned the St. Louis Cardinals. You talk about the first thing that you got licensed in was the NBA.
Right.
And now it's football, and it's obviously a little bit of everything. Exactly. But a year and a half into having APAA Sports, you partner with the group that people are willing to pay tens of millions of dollars to just be affiliated with. you become their partner.
Exactly.
And so what was that headspace like? Where here you are still moving 1,000,000 miles an hour where you don't have time to slow down. And then this is official. So this was what, 5-6 years ago?
This will be our 7th NFL draft and 7th NBA draft together.
And I mean, what was that like where you just had it kind of happen at, a natural pace, but you were thrown into it?
It went from 100 to 1,000 miles per hour.
Phil Costa
instantly.
needs a statue at the office.
Really does.
Like Phil Costa needs a rap album. We need to go and do. Lil Wayne needs to have a song just called Phil Costa.
Phil, Steven, Jesse, and Golden are the real reason why.
But really, it's Phil Costa.
Phil started it all.
Phil Costa. What's he doing now?
I'm not sure.
He needs to have. We need to get him in a duet with Lil Wayne.
I agree.
Okay, yeah, that's going to be the mission. We'll do a follow-up, and we're going to have Wayne on the Rogers Music Tour podcast talking about his #1 song that just won a Grammy. It's called Phil Costa. So this happens, and it happens at a quick pace. What was the strategy and the structure, knowing that you're now competing with these people that you were client of theirs, so they were a client of yours, and you have a draft coming up and all these other things where you have to set apart the fact that it's you and Wayne and the family connections, et cetera. What was the differentiator at the beginning?
I mean, really, in the beginning, we were just going to do basketball. And, I'm certified on the NBA front, so we were going to do basketball and really stick to that. We started getting together as a group, and we said, we can do both of this. We can do NFL and we can do NBA. So we put it together really in November, and we had about a month to figure out our plans and sign athletes, because at end of December, early January, the bowl games are over. And
you didn't have any athletes yet?
We had just a couple basketball players, but
no football.
No football.
And
our first client ever was Dede Westbrook, who was Blickendorf Award winner as the #1 receiver in the nation, a Heisman finalist. And we sat down with him, and he could go to any agency in the world.
This is after a month.
Mm-hmm. And he just
How did you get in front of him? DM?
Great question.
Did Wayne comment on one of his posts? Hey, check DM.
The first time I met him was after the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, right after that. And we sat down, had dinner, shared the vision, everything. And again, giving the shout outs, he's a pioneer that said, I believe in what you all are going to do, and I'm going to wave this flag. And again, I could go to any agency in the world right now that I wanted to, but I believe in the vision of what you all have going. And he was our first client.
When was he drafted?
He was, I guess now.
No, like what round?
Oh, 4th round. He was
so
a third overall pick.
You have a 4th round pick.
Exactly.
45 days after partnering.
Exactly.
Which again, it didn't give you time to slow down or to really put a ton of time into the structure. You're just going.
Exactly.
So what did the scale look like at that time? And again, y'all, this is not a normal situation across the board, but you found a way. I think that in business, it's really, really hard to start a business. I think it's even harder to maintain it.
Right.
And you found a way to do this. So as you're starting to build this, how did you go and place yourself in the places that you were supposed to be, knowing that you had other people, whether it's your family, your brothers, Wayne's team, et cetera, where you're still trying to go after the next Dede? Like, what was that like, even though you really didn't have a minute to breathe?
I mean, the crazy part about NFL and NBA is the draft in NFL is in April. Then the draft in NBA is in June. So you literally go straight from the NFL draft to at the end of April, the national championship's already done for basketball. So these players already have to start training. So while the NFL draft is still approaching, you're also having to go and figure out your NBA draft class as well. So talk about a never-ending.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, you're in your mid-20s. Exactly. And you were single at the time. And I think there's something really nice about really marrying your job, as unhealthy as that sounds. And I got married at 40 because I was married to my work for too long. But it started to work out. And as you're perfecting your pitches, talking to these guys that are wanted by everybody, and here comes the new guy, right? Which is an easy target for the tenured agents to be like, don't hire this other guy. He doesn't have a background on this, and he doesn't have a law degree.
Exactly.
Whatever. What was your differentiator? How did you go and genuinely pitch, the Young Money APAA services to these people that had access to everybody?
I think the authenticity of it was probably the biggest driving force, and realizing that the NFL contract, the NBA contract, that's always has to be the #1 priority for any person, any agency out there, right? But I think as we adapt, and even today, in today's world more than anything, like there's so much more of this, if every NFL draft pick is signing a 4-year deal. So and they cannot sign an extension until after 3 years. So I think that was our biggest differentiator there of, okay, so you have 3 years from now till you can re-sign with that same team, or 4 years and you're going to free agency. What else are you going to do for the client? And I think that's where a lot of it,
your background was different than everyone else.
Exactly. And there's so much you can do. And the biggest thing also is cementing them in that city, having them become a fan favorite in that city, because it's, everyone thinks, oh, it's only about the NFL game or it's only about the NBA game. There's so much more that goes into it. This is really just a huge business. Obviously we know the NFL is a huge business. The NBA is a huge business. So how do you help your clients, in all facets of it, not just on the football field and on the basketball field? So that was where we really ramped up everything of the marketing aspect, the giving back, the community aspect, the really building, now from us building our brand, which we had just built on the agency, to how does each individual player build their brand in that respective city and really nationwide as well.
Which in turn builds loyalty and also builds referrals, and it sets you apart from everyone else too, because they start to talk and they're like, how are you getting deals in the off season at a ping pong bar? It's exactly. Like you're bringing all worlds together. Did you or do y'all outsource any services at all? Like I'm saying, the stuff that you can do, does Young Money APAA do all of it? We do. Yeah, we do all of the contracts on NFL side, NBA side, and then all of the marketing off the field. Do any other companies do that? So, yeah, they do. They do. Yeah. So, but you guys pioneered having it all in house, and you were able to go train people. And I think that, like a music analogy, which you understand sports like I understand music, an orchestra, which if people don't know this, the weird person that is doing this with the little sticks, that person the orchestrator could go and step in at any time if the cello player falls over or the percussion player falls over. And I think that's what you've done, is you've led by example, because you know what it's like to do everything other than actually playing the professional sports game, which in the world of sports business is the least important part. That's right. So I think that's a differentiator. How do you go and train people to go and, assume these roles that you used to lead and live intimately? How do you find people to go and do this? I'm asking for my own selfish reasons too. It's really hard to step away from doing stuff that you're used to go work on elevating your potential. But what does that look like for you, especially when it's a relationship game, right? And how many clients do you guys have now across the board? About 55 NFL and NBA and overseas players all everywhere. Which means you can't talk to everybody every single day. Right. So how do you go and put people in those roles, knowing that they might screw up, but you're still growing? What does that look like? It's really about building the right team, and I think that is better than anyone. To your point, you can't be in 100 different places at once. I think, with that being said, I'm on my phone 24/7 because we don't, this is so much bigger than a client. If you're signing, to your point of, if you're signing with the agency, you're really signing part of our family, at this point of, we're there with you through every single thing, highs, lows, everything. So we do check in on our guys literally every week. But to that point too, it's about building the people that see the long-term vision. And I think it's really about the guys that don't view this as work, because if you view this as work, you're going to get burnt out really quick, because there's no such thing as 8 to 5. And in the sports agency, there's no weekends off. Obviously, NFL is all on the weekends. So, NBA games are every single day. So there's no 8 to 5. So it really has to be the people that live and breathe sports like I grew up doing and like I do, that will succeed and excel in this space. Can I ask you a loaded question? Of course. Has this made you a bigger sports fan, or sports is just your business now? I mean, great question. I live and breathe sports, so I still love it. So maybe a better way, are you still a fan? Yeah, I'm still a fan. I just think it's, you realize so much more of how big of a business this is. While most people think that 3-hour game on Sundays or the 2.5-hour basketball game, that's it. That's such a small proponent of the business of sports. There's so much more that goes into that. That's really one of the smallest pieces. Yes, that's how athletes get paid. That's the driving force behind it. But every single thing that goes into that most people don't even think of, that's the crazy part of what you would never see unless you're working in the sports. Yeah, I tell people in real estate, we've been able to work with athletes, and I parallel to like volunteering at a church. And the first time I volunteered at a church, I was like, oh my God, church is a business, right? Like this is a well-run machine. And I think sports is kind of it's the same way. And I think that you have to, I don't know if you have to detach the relationship or not, but realizing that, the people in it are so they're a product, right? Which has got to be hard too, to have 55 people relying on you, thinking they're the next big thing, and maybe it doesn't work out, and you still have to lead it like a business. And I think that's hard. I think it's hard for good people that are authentic like you, which has been a huge obstacle for me. There's some people that are just not cut out for sales, and I have to go and I have to own that and, focus on the ones that are focused, which you still do. So what would be the next step as you guys continue to grow? Is it another sport? Is it more clients? How do you go and continue to scale, which obviously you've proven to be great at? What's the next step for Young Money APAA?
I think it's really just about continuing to get the right kind of athletes, the athletes that really get it, that understand exactly what we're talking about right now, the business of sports. And to your point, everyone wants to be the greatest. So, you can't fault a player that says, I'm going to be the next Kobe Bryant, or I'm going to be the next Tom Brady. That's everyone's goal, and that's everyone's goal with whatever the business, but also understanding that the work that it takes, there's no shortcuts to this. And I think understanding your clients and the people that are really going to become part of your family that get that, because the biggest learning thing I think I've learned in this process is we're not right for everybody, and every player is not right for us. I don't want that short-term fix. I don't want to just say I represented a top 10 player but he doesn't see the long-term vision. It's instant gratification. It's, hey, it's all on my agent or everything. Everyone has a job to do in this, and having the right kind of people, you'll be much more successful, and it will lead to so much more, inside of that, because again, it's such a business, but there's no short-term success, I don't think, in anything in life. So
you think that's been the biggest obstacle, is facing, again, owning a real estate company, knowing that not every realtor wants to be a part of my company. We don't want, it's hard for me. Right. It's still hard having a little bit of ego and, wanting to build something. Is that, it sounds like it's not an obstacle for you. It
definitely was an obstacle in the beginning, because, in the beginning you're getting in this space and you're wanting to make a name for yourself. So you're going to sign whatever players, that you think will help that.
He tried to sign me. The first thing he said is, you got a great frame, and I had
your
eligibility.
Size. I thought you had it all.
And then I ran a 12.440, and he's like, "Oh, you need to meet Phil Costa. He's working on a rap album with Wayne."
Thank gosh, this isn't a laser. I don't know what we're gonna do here.
This clock is broken. So that's hard, and I think that a question that I would want to know, like most people, and you've kind of shed light on it. Is there even an average day for you, knowing that you have 55 families relying on you, not 55 people, which means you have probably 200 people that have your cell phone. You got a girlfriend, you got a life, you have other stuff that you're involved in, not just, with the agency. What does a typical life or day in the life for you look like?
There really is no day twice. That's the best part of it if you live and breathe sports, and that's the worst part of it if you don't think like that, or aren't wired like that. There is no such thing as, hey, I'm going to come to the office Monday and I'm going to come to the office Tuesday. It's going to be the same. It's going to be exactly opposite. And there's a ton of I'm sure it's same thing with you. There's a ton of putting out fires. There's a ton of, looking at every single obstacle and making the best decision. But there's definitely I couldn't say, hey, here's the approach to take and you'll be successful in the sports world. There's no approach to it that would make it, hey, this is what you got to do.
And again, I don't think everyone's built for that. I have this whole zany, weird, every day to me is Monday, right? And I wake up, even though today is technically Wednesday, it's Monday, right? Which is, again, people can't grasp this happy Monday thing. I'm like, no, first of all, no day is the same, but every day is an opportunity to go and win. And I think for you to champion the industry where the odds are stacked against you, you're taking the same approach, which, your back's against the wall, you got something going on with a contract, et cetera. It's like, you got to deal with it as efficiently as possible and put the right team in place to go and do that. What do you think the hardest part of your job is?
Another great question. I think the hardest part is just, juggling all aspects of the day-to-day that goes in on it, of knowing again that not any day is going to be the same, and tampering expectations, and again, I think as you get the right guys that fit, that makes this a lot easier, right? But understanding that there's a grind that goes into this, and every single, and the same thing that an athlete's going through, of it doesn't matter, you sign a max contract, that's great, that's life-changing money, there's no question of it. $250 million, $300 million in the NBA at this point, right? And especially with the salary cap going up. But those guys don't take days off. Those guys are investing $1 million into their body. They're perfecting their craft. Those are the guys that get it, that are at their pinnacle and will continue to be. But the idea of, hey, I was a great college player, so now I'm going to make it. Like, if you have that attitude, you've already lost. You know, like this is only going to get harder. It doesn't matter if you're the number 1 overall pick. That's great. But you also see guys that fizzle out as a number 1 overall pick because they believe they made it. Like they're and again, obviously a million things can come into factor there, injuries, of course, everything. But finding those right guys, because you're investing, I'm pouring my blood, sweat, and tears into this as well. I'm going to go to battle for you.
You're leading by example, and I think that they can appreciate you, which again, you can't buy that kind of hustle and that grind. And again, to rewind this 45 minutes ago, you grew up on a farm working literally manual labor, and that was something you got used to. And I think that to go and do that and to show people that you're literally showing up and that you're accessible, but you can't wake them up in the morning and say, go lift weights, go run and eat healthy, don't drink alcohol the night before. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, it's hard to learn, which I'm sure that's part of how you want to go lead your companies, which is working. What's the best advice you've ever received? Knowing that you have, again, you're a lot younger than me and you've had a lot of exposure to successful people, but if you had to go pinpoint, one moment in time or one piece of advice that really helped, put you on the trajectory that you're on, what would that be?
No shortcuts. You lead by example. Everything that we're talking about right now is really learning the full aspects of the business of sports. That's got to consume you in every single aspect. It's not just, I can't wait to have the number 1 overall pick, a top 10 pick in NFL or NBA. That's such a small proponent of it. Like, sure, everyone wants that. Everyone wants to have that glory and recognition, but there's so much more to it. Of you got to live and breathe this in all aspects of it, and you can't wake up and say, hey, oh gosh, this is a grind, I got to go back to the office, because it will never work in this business, because you're on a flight 200 days out of the year, you're traveling to different cities. There's good luck on planning something. You can't plan something more than a day.
I can't believe we did this in person.
You can never. Every day is different. You could be on a flight in 12 hours. You try to plan something a week in advance, I promise you it's going to change 4 times before you get to that end of the week or whenever that thing's planned. So.
You don't wait till you have kids. That's been the biggest thing for me is I love a great routine, even though there's no routine, but just knowing that I can do what's needed. But when you have a kid, the one thing I'll tell people, among other things, is you lose control of your schedule, right? Which is a very welcome change. But I get it. What would be your advice? I wanted to be a sports agent as a kid or a sports broadcaster. I did the realtor thing. What would be the advice that you would give somebody, no matter where they are, age, stage, access, et cetera, if they wanted to enter the world that you're in?
Find something that's going to separate you in this business. Again, what are you going to offer your clients? Again, I always look at it as, what are you going to offer your newest family members that's different than anyone else out there can offer? If it's, I'm going to give you the best contract, everyone's pitching that. At that point, it comes down to who's going to break down these numbers to the nth degree. Everybody has relationships in the NBA, the NFL. At the end of the day, that's completely a business. NBA GM, an NFL GM is going to do what's best for their team, no matter if they've known you for a month or if they've known you for 30 years. They're going to do what's best for that team because they have a family to feed. They're getting paid by that NBA or NFL team. So the idea of, sign with him and he'll pull a favor. There's no favors in this business. It's strictly a business. So go and find something that's going to differentiate yourself that you could offer for your clients that no one else is or no one's thinking about it. And equity today, that's become a lot more of the norm. That's what broke me into that 12 years ago, because people weren't doing it. And that was what able to separate me and really get my in. So, and I'm always looking at the next thing too, so, but to the competitors out there that are trying to break into it, find that, something that's going to separate you and do it and run through a wall for it.
What do you feel like your superpower is? You're a visionary, right? And I think that you don't have that part of your brain. I'm not telling you what it is, but I think that just sitting here and having an in-depth conversation, you see things differently. And I think that you see things bigger picture versus like what's happening today or tomorrow. You're able to go and do that. And again, it goes back to the scaling thing. I think in business, one of your gifts is you know how to scale. You know how to put things in place, which I think was the single hardest thing for me to do, was to step away or to go and create departments or whatever, remove myself from the minutia. But I feel like you learn that pretty quickly. But if you had to go and pinpoint the one gift that you have in the world of, business, sports, whatever, entrepreneurship, whatever, what do you feel like that is?
Adapting, always being open to change. Not being the person that's stuck of this is the way it has to happen. Always be willing to adapt. Hard, it sounds a lot easier. Always be willing to take other people's advice too, because you built this. You feel like, hey, this is my baby. I know exactly what it is. You're going to lose it if you do that. You always have to be willing to adapt and I guess surround yourself by people that are smarter than you. Know that you can really learn to continue to grow and adapt, because that, I think, and in the world in general, you got to always be willing to continue to learn and to adapt in any space.
Dude, you're so wise. I got 2 questions left. The first, I've been wanting to ask this, and I'm so excited. Lil Wayne's going to call you, and he said, Adie, we're going to do our own song. What's the song called?
That's hopefully Young Money APAA.
What? Yeah, and maybe what's the chorus of it? You're
better on music. You would know.
Yeah. I mean, Young Money APAA. I'm going to think on it.
I really would love
Phil Costa.
I would love Wayne to do something on the sports agency and maybe bring in the first
Phil Costa.
People that really put this together. I think that would be amazing.
I really hope Phil Costa listens to this, because I think it's so cool, man. It's just it's serendipity. And
the best part is he probably doesn't even know about this story, because I'm sure his agent put that on Mustang track. His agent probably told him he had an appearance. He said, "Hey, I can't do it," but he had no idea. I never spoke with him. I don't even think I had his phone number. His agent just called me.
But it goes back to what you're saying, adapting. You had an hour before. You couldn't cancel the party. You had promo girls. You had your butt on the line. You figured it out, and it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to you. Man, okay. And how do we support you? How do we find you online? And if this airs, before the Super Bowl, which chances are it's probably not going to, but right now they're doing a big push to go and get exposure, for their clients and for their brand through some NFT stuff, which has been super fun. But what's the best way for us to support you? Where do we find you online? Social media,
on Instagram, Young Money APAA Sports, all spelled out. On Twitter, it's easier, YMAPAA Sports. And I think to your NFT, like the NFT line, it's again going back to adapting. We're always trying to think, what can we do that's innovative, pioneer,
and set yourself apart from every other agency.
And we're creating just a sports community that where people can speak with our athletes. People can come into the community of what we have going on, interact with us. Us be accessible, help the young person that's coming up that wants to be in this business, showing them different avenues of it, but really creating a sports community for everybody out there.
Tell you what, man, you look back, you're my age, you're older, and you think of the things that you're most proud of.
I'm getting there quick.
I mean, I'm still going to outpace you. But you look back, you're our parents' age, you're older, and you think of all these things. And I think that success, and that you're a reason I wanted to do this. I think just having people get inside the head of someone who is incredibly successful across the board, but you're so approachable, you're so kind, you just have you have a great soul. And I think that that's not what people would assume about people like you and me, is I think that you've done something so significant so early that you're going to be a prick, or you're going to go and think you're better. But the advice you're giving is to be around learners and not knowers, be able to adjust. But when you think about all this kind of stuff in the world of business, what do you think is going to be the thing that you're most proud of?
Helping our athletes that see, hey, how do they use a platform of when their name's on the back of their jersey, all eyes are on them, right? And I'm glad you asked that question. Everyone's seen the horror story. 78% of athletes go broke within 3 years of retiring. 78%.
Wow.
The average lifespan in the NFL is, I think, 2.7 years, or maybe it's 2.9 years.
Wow.
Basketball can't be far off from that, right? So I want to be looked back and said, and this is the biggest thing that I'm most passionate about. Sure, we can all clap that we've done $1 billion in negotiation. That's great, right? But I want to be looked back as the guy that did it great for his clients on the field and on the basketball court. But just as important and even more important, they were able collectively to use that platform and become entrepreneurs
outside of the 2.7 years of their name being on a jersey.
Because even in that sense, you can go play in the NFL or NBA for 15 years if you want. at best case, you're 38, 40. If Tom Brady, 45, Tom Brady has half of his life left.
Yeah.
So, and he's been able to use that platform for the Brady brand, everything that he's doing, but that's 1 out of 1,000. How do we make that more of the norm? So that's what I want to be.
It's a legacy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I tell you what, that's your differentiator. If I was an athlete, that's why I'd hire you, is you genuinely care and you want to go and show them what it's like to be significant out of just being a celebrity.
And they have that gift. I mean, they have the sports gift, right, and the athletic gift, but also you have that platform. So maximize it, and that really starts the day that starts. And NIL has only helped that. Now you have that platform when you're in college, and eventually it seems like it's going to go that way too. Now you have that platform in high school, but start using that and growing that platform now. Not once I get in the league. Not, hey, I know I'm on my second or third contract. I know I'm on my ways out. You've already really put yourself behind the 8 ball. Like, start that instantly. No one wants to think of, man, I could be done tomorrow, and you don't have to put that in here, but start building that.
Have a sense of urgency.
Diversifying, exactly.
Man, good for you. I'm proud of you. I'm proud to be your friend, and I think that this is going to really inspire a lot of people. And again, just follow his journey. It's so fun to be a fan and just to see the stuff that y'all are doing. And again, it's not just in the world of sports. And I think that through that, you're using your brain, which keeps you young.
Definitely.
Congratulations, man. I'm proud of Young Money Sports, Young Money APAA Sports on Instagram, easier on Twitter. You can also go to their website, and they have great swag, most comfortable sweats I've ever put on.
Modeling it.
Yeah, this is it. My wife thought that was Adie it's actually their logo. But congrats on everything, man.
Thank you so much.
Excited to watch you continue to grow.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.